Recording. Record started.
Got it. Okay, like I said, thank you everybody for coming today. This is going to be our virtual interview workshop, and it's going to be presented by myself, Jaime Gomez, and Lucky Ye. So this is just a breakdown of our agenda. We're going to go over overall interview goals, some general tips, how to prepare, Q's and A's, answer formatting, and following the interview. And of course, we'll do a short mock interview to see what types of questions you'll receive and how to respond. Thank you, Megan. Megan has posted an attendance form in the chat. Please fill that out when you get the chance. So these are just some basic interview goals. You want to make this encounter more of a discussion opposed to an interrogation. You never want to feel, under pressure. I know it may be difficult your first few interviews, but eventually you're going to want to get more and more comfortable to the point where it's a conversation, discussion. It goes on both ends. You can ask questions. In that case, you're much more likely to get an offer for the position or get a follow-up interview. If you feel like it was an interrogation, you most likely won't get the position. And this is something that your first couple times, like I said, you're going to be nervous, but you improve as you do more interviews. You want to prove that you're the right fit for the position and the team and the company. Something that many of you may have heard in, if you attended Pacific Life's info session, is people hire people they want to work with. That means if you have hobbies that are similar and you're an outgoing person and you have the ability to learn, you will have a high chance at getting that position. You want to prove that you're knowledgeable and your experience in the field or in school will help you succeed at that role. And be confident. Confidence is key. So these are just some general tips. There are a lot. So like I said before, interviewers are looking for people with technical skills, but more importantly, people that have great communication skills. In the insurance industry and the actuarial industry, it's all about being able to communicate difficult concepts to people that don't understand them, and being able to work in a team environment. So these are just some, common known facts: arrive early, dress and act professionally, always prepare for the worst, sell yourself, of course. You're selling your experience and your knowledge. That's the main point of an interview. And some people are afraid to talk about hobbies. If it comes up, go for it. Like I said, if they have a common hobby with you, they'll definitely remember you. This is one big thing. Take your time before answering questions. For the people that have done interviews, you know that a lot of times they will tell you if you need a moment to gather yourself or your thoughts, take your time. It's better to take, 10, 20 seconds to formulate exactly what you're going to say so that you don't stutter or mess up on anything. And if you're ever asked in an interview, do you know what linear regression is? That's one that Aon likes to ask. Or do you know what variance is? If you're asked something like that about some type of term or concept, they will 100% ask you to explain it to them. So if you don't know what it is, don't lie. Because once you're put on that spot, you can't go back. So preparing for your interview, you definitely want to research the company beforehand, any news, different types of products they have, what track it is, of course. Anything big in the news, definitely look into that. You can discuss it during your interview. It shows that you're curious and you're interested in the company. If possible, sometimes you deal with someone on the recruiting team that will message you, so you don't have access to the interviewer's information. But if you do, definitely connect with your interviewer on LinkedIn. Practice with friends, family, professors, anybody. Practice makes perfect. So, whoever you're comfortable with, go for it. And then study insurance, risk, probability, finance, statistics. I'd especially say if you're going for a consulting firm, that's going to be very big. They will definitely ask you about consulting concepts and possibly in-depth questions about analyzing data. Study your resume in and out. Don't lie on your resume. You want to be able to explain every single bullet point in detail. You know, and we talked about this before. You want to be able to talk about the impact you made at a certain position, skills that you improved upon, and how you currently use them now. As you get further and further in the interview process, usually it goes to 3 at max. That's when they'll really pick apart everything you have down. So make sure you study it before your interview. So these are just some questions you'll be asked, and I'll kind of walk through ways to answer them. So this is an elevator pitch. More commonly, you'll be asked, tell me about yourself. When I first did my first 2 or 3 interviews, I messed up on these. I was very short. I would only say, my name is so-and-so, this is my major, this is my school. This is your opportunity to really sell yourself. You can talk about your values, your morals, what made you want to become an actuary, and certain technical and behavioral skills that will help you be successful at that company. Especially you can mention, I see that you work in this industry and this type of skill is needed. I practice it in this. Usually 1 to 2 minutes. I know on HireVue, they'll give you 2 minutes. In a face-to-face interview or virtual interview, maybe 90 seconds. But yeah, this is a really good way to open up strongly. So they will always ask about your experience, work, and school. Don't be concerned if you don't have many jobs, because they will look at your coursework. They'll look at if you have case competitions, exams, things like that. If you do have jobs, we'll talk about what you did that job, how you were successful, and any projects you worked on. We'll go over a little later how to formulate your response and make sure it comes out nice and clean. For previous work and project or case competition experiences, this is a very common, one second, I just saw something in the chat. Resume workshop, it will be recorded and posted on the website. You can find it now, and you can talk to us after the meeting if you like. So back to work questions, project case competitions. They'll ask you a time where you adapted to an obstacle and how you did it, what skills you used, and what the outcome was. Another thing you will see is, sorry, does someone have the drawing ability right now? Okay. Another thing you'll see is talking about a time you learned a new skill. They will always ask you these questions, steps you took to be successful. And you want to make sure you're very clear about the steps you took, how you did so, and what the outcome was. Another thing is, how have you previously shown skills related to this job? So like I said, I think I've talked about before, if you've been an educator or you've been in sales or consulting, you can definitely use that to your advantage to talk about those people skills you can use at this position. Jeff, these will be later posted on our website as for the other workshops. So behavioral questions. These are probably 50 to 60% of what they're going to judge you off of. They want to make sure that you fit into the team, you fit into the company, not that you're just like a robot that can just compute. You have to fit in. They want to look for well-rounded people. So you'll hear, why do you want to be an actuary? I usually talk about my love for basketball, baseball, and soccer growing up, and how I always love looking at the stats and for each player and each team. When I learned about insurance, I found the intersection, and that's why I wanted to become an actuary. Obviously, a lot of people here are in it for the money. It's very lucrative, but you definitely want to sell yourself, tell your story. You're going to be asked your biggest challenge you overcame, how'd you do so? Internal conflicts, things like that. And you don't have to talk only about work. if there's a challenge that you overcame in your life relating to relationship or family, where you use some type of people skills, definitely talk about that. It's not restricted to work and projects only. Greatest strengths, you'll hear that. For biggest weaknesses, you're going to want to talk about how your weakness has transitioned to become a strength and talk about how you improved on it or how you're still working on it now. As for greatest achievement and greatest strengths as well, I would say be humble. Do not brag, do not try to flex on your achievement. You want to talk about the steps you took to get there and, how those types of skills will help you in your future role. Technical questions. So your course can be asked, why do you want to work at this company? At this position, how will you be successful? What can you provide that other candidates can't? So you can talk about certain courses you've done, certain languages you've used before, maybe in PSTAC courses that the company uses, or reserving methods, pricing methods, things like that. What courses have you taken? Like I said, that'll mainly go back to maybe linear regression, or if anybody here is taking PSTAT 183, that's a very helpful course for the P&C route. As far as languages and your applications, if you had an internship before, it's great to talk about that. If you've done a case competition, or you were part of like the data science club or some type of project from a course, talk about that, how you did it, what applications you did, and how you were successful. This is a question that a lot of companies ask. They'll ask you about a concept. So I've gotten variance before, linear regression, deductibles. They want to know your understanding of insurance and actuarial terms, and they will most likely ask you to answer it, explain it to us, as if we have no idea what that is. So be prepared to explain some of these terms, as if you're talking to a 5-year-old, maybe a 10-year-old. One question I've gotten while interviewing at Centene last year was, how many tires are in the United States? There's no correct answers. You may have seen this question before in a different way. A lot of times asked as, how much would it cost to clean all the windows in Seattle? Or how many doors are there in the United States or in the world? They want to see your approach, what statistical methods you use, variables that you take into account, and standard error, things like that. They want to see that you are taking all the right steps to be accurate. There's no correct answer, and they don't have an answer. As long as you don't say something ridiculous, it'll be fine. As in terms like numbers, as long as you don't say there's 10 billion tires in the world, But it's all about your approach. That's what they want to see. Some companies, more so data science, consulting, finance, will ask candidates on the spot to work on a case study, or they'll tell you a few days in advance about a case study, either 30 minutes individually or 1 to 2 hours in a team setting. You'll be breaking down data and presenting it to the interviewers. This is something we'll be talking about more in a workshop, I believe, at week 5. I've never received this. I've interviewed over 20 companies. So we're talking with alumni, we're talking with some of our students and officers that have experienced this. And so we'll be able to shed more light on that in the coming weeks. So this is follow-up. Now, at the end of an interview, you will always be asked, do you have any questions for me? Don't be quiet. If you have any questions about how the company works, methods they use, products they sell, definitely ask. This is when you're going to want to apply your research to the company. You're going to want to talk about, how did this event affect this product? Or do you foresee something like car insurance going up in this city because of this reason? Think about some of these questions before you go in. You should definitely have 2 to 3 in your head. So when you get to this moment, it shows you're curious, it shows you're interested. I occasionally will ask what language the company uses. It's always interesting to learn. Some companies, they use SAS, Python, R. And then something, how do you apply this concept? So I know I did the UCLA case competition in January, and we did certain reserving methods taught in PSTAT 183. I think the most popular one is paid chain ladder method. So if you know that you're interviewing with somebody that's in the reserving department, feel free to ask them about a certain concept, how they apply it, factors that come into play at their job, things like that. When you're able to, talk about terms like this, it shows you've done your research, and it definitely will pay off. They'll definitely remember you, and it's good to close an interview with these types of questions, because then it kind of transforms it into a conversation, a discussion that, that makes it, that cements it as being a discussion, because it's a back and forth type of thing. They're learning about you, you're learning about them, and it shows you're a sociable person. So before I move on to like answering format, does anybody have any questions or comments about these questions in the previous slides? You can unmute yourself or type in the chat. Okay, yeah, we'll have another chance after this. So this is something that I definitely improved on over the summer in my internship with Blue Shield. They offered constructive interview workshops, and this is definitely the most important thing I took from it. You want to be clear. The way that I used to, in certain scenarios when I would answer, you want to be a diamond. You want to talk, open it up, explain, break it back down, so you have your conclusion. You don't want to just go on and on and on, because it's going to be hard to know when to stop, and you will waste time. So if you're asked something about, what's the biggest thing you overcame and what skills did you learn? You want to set it up. Oh, when I was in high school, I had this problem in my family and it was affecting me in this way. I learned how to, help my family, or how to improve our situation by practicing these communication skills, and other in jobs, technical skills. And then when you close, talk about, highlight the skills you practiced again and how they're being currently used and what the outcome was. I'd say if you've talked for more than 2.5 minutes in an interview, just you, that might be a little too long. You want to be concise, and definitely practice some of these questions. You can find a lot more online. Definitely practice these. For each of these types of questions, you're going to want to have a scenario in your head. So it's almost like reading off a script. You can change some things up and adjust it based on the question, but there's nothing worse than being asked a question in an interview and not knowing what to say or not having an example. So think about certain experiences in your life or at work or at school, things dealing with conflict, challenge, success, achievements, and, how you took the steps to get to the final goal, and how things, those steps currently make you more successful than your old self. So definitely practice, think about all types of examples. After your interview, so this is, pretty simple. Send a thank you email to all the parties that interviewed you. Definitely, I'd say within an hour. The sooner the better. If you do it in 10, 15 minutes, that's great. Self-evaluation. This is something that I learned after my first few interviews. You're gonna want to have a notepad or a doc open on your computer and jot down your mistakes. If there's any concepts you weren't able to explain correctly, if they ask you a certain question about your resume you weren't able to, talk about as in depth as you'd like, or if you were just shocked by a question, you don't know what to do. Write these down. They'll help you improve and practice those things. And as you go interview by interview, you'll get better. Connect with your interviewers on LinkedIn. I definitely say that's a big thing. Send your thank you letter, then connect with them. They'll see, oh, they took the time to connect with me. They want to build a relationship with me. And be quick. Whenever I see an email about someone being interested in interviewing me or going to a second round, or saying, oh, sorry, at this time, we're not looking to hire you, follow up with them right away. It shows you're interested. You don't want to let an email linger on days or forget about it. You want to show that you're still interested in the company. Even if you don't get the position this time around, it shows that you are professional. That you're not going to be butthurt about the result. And a lot of times you will interview with the same people, like for internships, it will be a good amount of time the same people. One moment.
Oh no, I think we lost him.
I think he'll be back soon.
Yeah, he's probably.
Sorry about that. Roommate troubles. Did somebody have a question? No? Okay. Well, yeah, just be professional at all times. Following up with your interviews. Feel free to chat with your interviewer on LinkedIn. And even if it doesn't go your way, you want to build your network on LinkedIn. People will see that you have a lot of connections with different representatives, different actuaries from different companies, and that's always better.
I had a question.
Yeah.
You mentioned that instead of trying to answer the question right away, we should take time and think about it. Can you give an example of what to do so that it doesn't seem awkward?
Yes, of course. So this is something that I actually learned from my father. He is in the insurance industry, and he has told me many times that when he's in conversation with actuaries or in business meetings, they take their time. And you will notice this as well. I've noticed this with several speakers. You want to gather yourself, make sure you're composed when you're speaking. If they ask you, and this is usually for questions about experiences in your life. What's one time that you failed and how'd you learn from it? Most of the times, and Megan, Jaime, you may be able to back me up on this. They'll say, take your time before you answer. Sometimes it's better, maybe 10 seconds, that's all you need, maybe 5 seconds. But you don't want to, I mean, if you are ready and the question and you've studied these things and you can nail it, go for it. But like I said, don't try not to talk too fast. By gathering yourself, it just avoids, saying a lot or saying and, pauses, stuttering, things like that.
I think, Dylan, if I'm away in here, I think the most important thing is that you need to prepare for these interviews. And when you're hit with a question that you don't know the answer to, that's because you didn't prepare enough. So with these behavioral questions, there's a million different questions that they can ask, but they're all relatively the same. There's going to be about 10 different questions they're going to ask. One of them is going to ask you about a situation you've been in that you've overcome. One of them is asking about your failure. So you need to have these 10 behavioral interview questions down, and then you can tailor each of these stories to the specific question they ask. And so you need to know the story inside and out. And so once you have that in mind, once you've prepared enough, once you've talked to the camera enough, many times, you'll be able to easily adjust to the given question, because there's going to be thousands of questions they're going to ask. So I think that's an important thing.
Definitely. Thank you, Jaime. And back to what you're saying, yeah, a lot of them are the same question, just rephrased different ways. And a lot of experiences you have can be just adjusted on the spot to fit their question. As for your experiences, one piece of advice, try not to use the same experience again, more than twice. You want to show that you have some variety in life experience, and if it's for relationships, work, projects. Try not to talk about the same case competition in 3 different behavioral questions. Just practice. I think practice is the main thing, trying to see all the different questions you can be asked, so you're prepared. And mainly, if you need to take maybe 10, 15 seconds, 20 seconds, that's maybe that time in your head you can use, okay, let me tailor this, let me adjust this example to fit this question so that you can respond in the way that, let me go back a couple slides. Okay, but the diamond, you want to be able to set it up, explain, and clearly close. That's the main thing. I hope I answered your question.
Dylan, I'm just going to stress on one more thing. No one's expecting you guys to be perfect people. They don't expect all of your experience to be in college. When I got the question asked of me about tell me the time you failed in your life. It was actually going all the way back to middle school when I was enrolled in the honors math program, and my counselor advised me to disenroll in the program, despite the fact that I was one of the top students in the class. And I talked about how I needed my parents to push me. My mom actually went to my counselor and fought for me on my behalf. And I talked about how as a 14 or a 13-year-old boy, I needed help at the time. And that was kind of a turning point in my life. I failed to realize early on in my life that I was good enough to be in the program. But now that I'm in university, now that I'm in college, I'm pursuing mathematics degrees. And that was a big failure on my part. But you don't have to have an experience that happened in the last 6 months or the last 2 years. It can be any experience. As long as it's a good story, that's what matters more. So your behavioral questions can be on anything you've ever had experienced in your life.
Thank you. Any other questions before we move on? Okay. So now we're going to do a mock interview. I'm going to be asking Jaime and Lucky different questions. It's going to be an intermingled interview. I want you guys to have different perspectives from different types of answers, backgrounds. So yeah, I'll be the interviewer and we'll get started. Hi, Jaime. How are you doing today?
I'm doing very well. How are you?
Good. Thank you for asking. How did you hear about this position?
I saw a listing on Glassdoor and I decided to apply. It looked really interesting to me. I definitely meet all of the requirements, so I'm super excited to be here.
Great, great. Okay, let's get started. So tell me a little bit about yourself, who you are.
Great. So my full name is Jaime Gomez. I'm a student at UC Santa Barbara. A little bit about me. I'm originally from Los Angeles County. I was born and raised in the San Fernando Valley, which is the big valley adjacent to LA City. I have 3 wonderful siblings and 2 great parents. My older sister, she's actually in her 2nd year of law school. And that's kind of a little bit ironic since my parents were both teen parents. My mom was 18 when she gave birth to my sister. So the fact that my sister is where she is, given the circumstances of our family, is certainly definitely provides a lot of inspiration for me, and she's definitely someone I look up to. And so that's a little bit about my upbringing and my parents. I actually, after high school, my parents provided private middle school and high school for me, and thankfully I attended UC Santa Cruz for 2 years. I was studying information technology systems in Santa Cruz, and that was a huge experience for me. I definitely didn't want to be there for my 4 years, and so to kind of stand out as an applicant to UC Santa Barbara as a transfer student, which is something I knew I wanted to do since I got there, I made sure to focus on 3 different areas of my application to UC Santa Barbara immediately when I got to Santa Cruz. 1 was professionally, 2 was academically, and 3 was athletically. On the academic side, I definitely made sure to keep my grades up, so that was pretty straightforward. But professionally, what I did was I used that information technology system experience that I developed at UC Santa Cruz, and I went back home during my freshman year of COVID, and I reconstructed the entire information technology system from my father's 45-person construction firm, everything from the email server down to the job calendar. I reconstructed all of it, and I actually currently manage its upkeep. And so that was one of the professional things that I wanted to make stand out as an applicant to UC Santa Barbara. On top of that, I actually decided to set a 1-year goal to get my real estate license. I took the 3 required courses at community college, and I did this on top of the actual academic workload, the full-time academic workload at UC Santa Cruz. And so I ended up passing the exam on the first try with obviously countless hours of studying. And then so that was the kind of professional experiences that ended up, making a sound resume for me to apply to UCSB. On the athletic side, I decided to start running marathons. I read a book by David Goggins called Can't Hurt Me. And the book talks about how you have to do the things that you don't want to do to be the person that you want to be. And I certainly don't like running, but I want to be a person that challenges myself. And for that reason, I decided to start running marathons. As I speak to you right now, I'm actually training for my 3rd Los Angeles marathon. And so all these kind of factors definitely build a strong resume for me to apply to UCSB. And thankfully, I got into my dream school. And so I'm now 4th year. And what I'm currently up to right now is I'm actually part of the UCSB baseball data analytics team. And I worked very hard to get this internship. I understood that it was definitely going to be a super, super diverse and super qualified applicant pool. And so what I did was I actually read an entire book called Mathletics. And this book called Mathletics talks about how you have to use baseball sabermetrics, which is a discipline of using analytics and baseball combined, and the importance of this in the sport. And so I read this book cover to cover. And so in my interview process, I talked about the book, and I got the job. And so right now I'm using linear regression applications to make predictions on player evaluations. So that's a little about me and a little bit about what I'm up to right now. Thank you.
Thank you, Jaime. That was amazing. I'm so happy to hear you made it to UCSB, and I love your story. I've heard of David Goggins before. I've watched some videos on him.
Certainly, he's a hard ass, if I may say.
Definitely. So now I'd like to ask you, I want you to talk about a time where you were put on a team and you had to work with somebody that disagreed with you. And I want you to talk about how you overcame that and what steps you took and what the outcome was.
Sure thing. Great question. Give me 5 seconds if you could let me gather my thoughts so I can make sure I give you a good answer if that's okay.
Of course, take your time.
Okay, great. I have a story I think I can talk about. So during my sophomore year of college, I was placed into a group of 4 where we had to work on a project on linear regression and its application to real data. And being that I was the most social person of the group, I was nominated by my group members to be the leader of the group. And as part of the leader of the group, I made sure to stress on 3 important things. Number 1, everyone's voice deserves to be heard, and it definitely should be heard. Number 2, people should work on tasks that best suit their skill set. And number 3, everyone has a common goal, and we should all keep that in mind when we're working together. And so with these things in mind, we set out to kind of complete this project, and I decided to go survey students on campus. The main goal of the project was to determine whether or not SAT scores in high school were good indicators of an actual college student's GPA. And so I decided to go on campus and start randomly serving students. Meanwhile, my group members decided to work on building linear regression models in Python. And so after a week and a half of progress, we realized that the project was far more difficult to complete in Python than initially anticipated. And so as a leader of the group, I had to propose different ideas to the solution. And so I decided to propose the idea of switching all of the code to R. Now, being that we were a week and a half into the project, this presented many problems. It was probably going to be equally difficult, but as a risk taker that I am, I decided to propose the idea, and we had some people who disagreed. And so when they disagreed, we decided to weigh the pros and cons and talk about it as a group discussion. And we ended up deciding that the majority should rule. And so that person, despite the fact that they disagreed with a huge change, they were in the minority. And so once I kind of conveyed that, and I mentioned the fact that the majority should rule, they were kind of okay with it. And so with that in mind, we ended up completing all the project requirements. We ended up getting everything done. We took a risk, but the risk certainly played out in our favor. And so that's a time when I had to work on a project, and I was having to work with someone who was a little bit difficult. I had to kind of rationalize my opinion and then make sure to include everyone in the process. Thank you.
Thank you, Jaime. Sounds like a great experience.
Thank you.
So now I'd like to turn it over to Lucky. So Lucky, I am looking at your resume, and as you know, we are a P&C firm. I saw you did a case competition. How did that go? What type of things did you do? Can you tell me more about that? And feel free to take your time.
Yeah, sure. Give me like 5 seconds to gather my thoughts on how I can explain what I did for the case competition. So I have participated in the 2021 fall quarter UC Berkeley case competition last year. There I had the pleasure on collaborating with 3 other actuarial science students and was able to work with realistic data to present business solution for health and benefits and retirement cases. I was able to shadow experienced actuarial science student and learn the basics of Excel for sorting and managing large number of data. I was also able to learn how to measure and track the performance of the company's books of business using technical skills by measuring the loss ratio and using something that we call the incurred but not paid estimate. And we completed that by using this method called the completion method, which is just an estimate for future payout of claims using historical data that our case competition provided us. We presented the data and explained how much the resources that the company should prepare for in case of a loss and how profitable the company is based on the loss that they incurred that month compared to the profit they received from the premiums they also collected from the same month. Overall, during my time working with my team on this case competition, I learned many technical skills, important concepts for insurance, and how an insurance is able to forecast potential profit and losses with Excel.
Thank you, Lucky. So I heard you mention insurance, and I'd just like to ask you, do you know what a premium is, and do you know what a deductible is?
Yeah, sure, I can explain that.
Great.
So in simple terms, insurance exists because people seek security, safety, and risk is just the probability of losing that safety that sense of safety and security. And premium are like just regular payments to keep your health care plan active or any type of care plan that you have. Usually higher premiums mean lower deductibles. They're just regular payments. They can be made on a monthly basis, quarterly basis, yearly basis. And as for deductible, it's just a certain amount of money you pay out of pocket for covered services before your insurance or plan can kick in. So as an example, let's say you're a farmer and you're afraid that this year's winter might be too harsh for you, and you're not certain that you may be able to harvest the crops. Let's say you pay some premiums, regular payments again for each month, around $50 starting from August to December. So that's 5 months. Let's say your crop didn't make it during winter, and thanks to your premiums for an insurance, you'll now have to pay just a small fee, the deductible, before the insurance can come over and kick in and cover your loss. And that could be around $10. And after paying your deductible, you're now covered. And if you're lucky enough to use a for-profit insurance, not only does it cover your loss for the harvest that for the crops that you didn't manage to harvest, but there's also a potential profit that the company will also cover for you that was lost as well.
Thank you, Lucky. I like your example. Thankfully, here in California, we don't have winters that bad.
But there are droughts.
Yes. So do you have any questions for me before we end the interview?
So I know that ABC is a P&C company, so you're dealing with property and casualty or liability, in other words. And I have a question. I know for the pandemic, COVID-19 has impacted the car insurance industry. And I know that during that time, most people are working remotely or unemployed, and they may not have the need to drive to go to work. So how did that impact ABC Insurance revenue and profit?
Thank you. Great question. So for car insurance, like you said, people were working remotely. They weren't driving to the office as much. And because of that, there was less payout. So we didn't have to spend as much on car insurance. And because of that, I know our company and other companies as well actually started to reimburse some drivers, that safe drivers, for not driving as much and for not needing to use car insurance. Now, in terms of liability, I would say the same. We didn't notice there was a dip, not as big as insurance. People always need to have liability just in case something happens. As for techniques we used to use techniques that would take into account a constant or a current pattern of previous data. But because of COVID, it spiked down for actual insurance prices. Because of that, we've had to adjust our models. And of course, moving forward, for catastrophes, of course, we have to reserve. For this, we're just using a different method in case something like this happens again. I know there was monkeypox that gave us a scare over here at the firm, but thankfully our models have taken small, how do I say? We've taken into account like blowbacks or, rises in sickness after COVID. That's definitely something that we considered. And yeah, our models changed, techniques just adapted. But yeah, thank you for the question, Lucky. I enjoyed our interview.
Yeah, thank you so much. I enjoyed our discussion and I like the input for that question as well.
Of course. All right. Well, and thank you, Jaime, as well. I'll be getting back to you both soon. Have a great day.
Gracias.
Thank you. It was a pleasure. You too.
Okay. Good job, guys. Thank you. So I just want to kind of walk through what they did. if you saw Jaime's elevator pitch, you broke down a little about where he's from, his story of how he got here to UCSB, professional background he had working with his father's company, as well as academic background and athletic. The athletic background really gives you a better chance of people, sharing hobbies. It's something that you would root for when you hear that story. You're really, like I said, you're selling yourself. Talking about your experiences, your values, how your upbringing brought you here. I believe his was 2 minutes, 2.5 minutes, and that was good. He really broke down everything. I really like that. As for the behavioral question, you'll notice that he displayed his skills in leadership, organization, and even confrontation. He was dealt with difficulty where he had to kind of sway the decision of a group. And if you notice, he broke it down, explained, and then summed up what happened, how he learned from it. The same thing happened with Lucky. Great job as well. We talked about his case competition, all the methods he needed, and what skills he used for it. So definitely set it up, talk about what you're doing, and you can talk about how you're using those applications or methods now. And then, yeah, I asked Lucky about insurance, deductibles. More than likely, the interviewer will ask you to explain it. I think I've heard a lot, explain it as if I were a 5th grader. So if you see how first he broke down the definition, and then he gave an example. Does anybody understand a farmer, crops, the winter, something like that, or something about, I don't know, for a kid, losing your bicycle, something like that. And the reason they're asking you that, it may seem remedial, but these are techniques that, a good amount of people in insurance understand them. But when you really start working at a company, interning at a company, you'll be using methods or, executing certain statements in a language that, a third party or somebody outside of your team will have no idea. They won't know what's going on. They'll say, oh, in English, please. And that's where you can come in and break it down so they actually understand it. So that's why questions like that are asked. And then you see Lucky asked about certain, how COVID or certain events affected the company. And this is something you'll notice, when you ask some of these questions, they themselves will take a moment, they'll think, okay, let me think about that. And the same thing, you want to gather your thoughts, be composed, and be able to explain yourself. Jeff, how long is an average interview? I would say 30 minutes on average. Occasionally, you will be asked to do an hour long with 2 to 3 people. That will usually be the final round. 30 minutes, I say, is the industry standard. And it goes by, if you're doing, if it's going well, it goes by a lot faster than you expect. Are there any other questions? Any experiences anybody wants to share, or questions about their own interviews?
You can
I had
also
a
answer
question.
questions. Oh,
I had a question, Jaime. But it's not about the outline. Are you guys gonna move forward to a different topic? Because I can also wait until the end.
This is it. So I basically just broke down the types of, behavioral experience and, life technical. Those are the main types of questions you're going to get. Obviously, there's a lot of questions you can get. So to study, and I think we've talked about this as well, Michaela. You want to have like a good amount of experiences where you can kind of adapt them to that question. And that's the main thing I'd say is important.
Okay. I had a few questions.
Go for it.
So in the event that we do not get the internship or the job, what is the etiquette like concerning when we should reapply, if we should reapply after a certain time period?
This is just personal. If you don't get it, if I see it open again, I apply right away. You want to be persistent. I have a story. So my cousin was having a really hard time in his life, and he was not able to find a job. Dropped out of college, and he decided to go to become an electrician. And he lived in Pasadena, some of you may know, and he had to drive to LA County or downtown LA every day. And he went there 7 in the morning to meet the director of the union to ask for an opening. He did this for 3 months straight. He's so persistent. They finally said, you usually have to be 25, 26. He got him when he was 23. And they said, you know what? You got it. You can, I'll give you an interview. You can have this position. So I definitely say, don't be afraid to apply. If you persist, it shows that you really want it. And persistence like that is something that it's more than the average person will do. So you will stand out. That's actually how I got my internship with Blue Shield. I applied when Joe came to speak here in October of last year. I applied. I didn't get an interview, and I was a little bit sad, but more positions opened up, and I applied again after Anna presented the opportunity. And I got the position. I did a few interviews, and it went well, and I got it. And they remembered me because, I was polite with them. I connected with them. So it worked out for the best. I'd say usually it's a couple months in between new opportunities coming up. For those that if you're worried, oh, I can't get, it's right now, it's not happening for me. Keep trying. There is this recruiting in the spring, and even in April and May, there are still opportunities. Some of these companies, at the end of a quarter, they're still like trying to find out how many interns they need, how much help they need or manpower, or certain people will, back out of jobs or back out of internships. And that's where you can swoop in and take those jobs. So just, yeah, be persistent, definitely.
Yeah, I'm going to add on to that. You can apply as many times as they allow you to. So if every company is different, but so for instance, JP Morgan, they only allow you to apply to 3 different roles in 1 year. And that's definitely not the case for most companies. You have to kind of tailor your application process to each company, understand the requirements of each company, and then reach out to their support teams if you don't know the answers. Because once you do that, you kind of set yourself apart. So I think that's a pretty good answer to your question.
Okay, so there's not really a strict line between persistence and annoyance. If we got it, then we should just go for it.
Yeah, no, you should definitely keep up with these companies if you want to apply as many times as they let you. If they deny you from a certain position, well then yeah, they're denying you. If another position becomes available or that same position becomes available to you, then keep applying. But basically apply as much as you can. If you get denied a job, then that's one you can apply for again. That makes sense.
Yes, thank you. And then my other question is in regards to the career fair this week. Should we go to like all the booths, or do you have like a certain number where we should visit? Because I know like you recommend doing research. So how many
Yes.
booths are visitable?
Yes, great question. So I believe we have 14 booths set up. The first 2 hours is exclusive members only. So if someone here is sitting in this, these are all obviously just registered members. You don't have to be paid to attend these workshops. But if you aren't a paid member, that's one big thing to consider. You have 2 hours where it's AA members only. I say definitely take advantage of that time. That's when you're going to want to drop by. Maybe have half of them, maybe 8, 9 in mind that you want to do research for. The lines aren't going to be as long to talk to these representatives at the time. And when it comes to meet the companies, that's 1:30 to 2:30. It's open to all students. That's when it could be a little more competitive. I know the Undergraduate Accounting Society is advertising this, and so it's a data science club. So get on it. Once you arrive, every minute counts in that 2 hours. At the same time, don't think, don't see, we have one company, we have Apple, and then we have one company, some smaller tech company, I'm blanking, I don't know. Don't think that just, I should only be talking to the most prestige ones. If you're at that point where you have a lot of experience and you're in a position to do that, that's fine. But if you're still looking for internship, you're looking for a position, go talk to the smaller ones, the mid-sized ones. You know, you'll have a good opportunity there. And a lot of times these smaller companies, I'd say one positive is you have the opportunity to wear more hats. You know, you get to do more, you get to see a lot more, talk to more departments, things like that. But yeah, Michaela, like you said, you gotta research a lot of them. I say maybe 10 companies that you want to talk to. And for these, you know, they're not going to ask you on the spot, hey, Michaela, what's your biggest weakness? You know, they're not going to ask you that. You know, they're going to just kind of give you some information. And from there, if they're interested, they will ask for an interview, either on Friday or at a later time.
Okay, sounds good. Thank you for your answers.
Of course. So it's almost 7. We have a few minutes left.
I had a question.
Mhm.
This isn't really like an important one, but like how long would you say like the average company takes to like get back to you after like submitting like a application or like a resume?
No, I can answer this one. So it definitely depends on every single company. Every company is different. For instance, I applied to Fannie Mae back in June, and they got back to me in September. So
Mhm.
it was months after. It depends on their HR process, how they want to hire who. It depends on so many different factors. If you haven't heard back from them from 3 months, I would say definitely move on. But that doesn't mean that they're not going to reach out to you. They could reach out to you. They could give an offer to someone else, and then that person didn't accept that offer, and so now they'll go back to you and look at your application. So just apply.
Yeah. Also, do you guys like wait? I don't know if waste your time is like, would you guys say that you apply to jobs that have been like, they always say like how long ago they've been posted or something like that. Like after like a month, would you still, or does it really not
Yes.
matter?
If it's open, I'd say yes. But if you have the opportunity to be one of the first people, that's great.
Yeah.
A lot of these big companies, what you'll notice is they do higher view. Like we said, you know, they have pre-recorded questions. Some of you may be familiar with this. You know, it'll just be a blank screen and be, oh, answer this question. You know, you have 2 minutes to answer it. Something like that. A lot of big companies do that to weed out people that don't prepare. So as a big company, don't feel like intimidated at all. Most companies, I'd say it doesn't matter, but definitely try to apply in the first 30 days. That's when you might get a response quicker. Same with like I think your original question you're asking, was it about how long to get back to you about your application? Correct?
Yeah, pretty much.
Okay. Yeah, if you're one of the first people to apply, depending on their HR process, like Jaime said, they might get back to you sooner. It just depends. I applied to a company a while ago, and the next day they said no, thank you.
Yeah, because I have a couple that are in progress, and I'm like, is that just like a formality? Are they just waiting to say no, or?
That's a formality for them to say that they haven't processed your application. If they don't like
Yeah.
you, they'll say no right away. Otherwise, they're still considering you as an applicant for sure.
Definitely, yeah, definitely. And then like Jaime talked about, for getting a position, they take a while sometimes. I applied for one in last September, and I did the 3rd interview in like the last week of September, and they didn't get back to me until late February. So some of them take a long time. Like Jaime said, they're waiting on someone's reply to then offer you the position. They just want to keep you, you know, in the loop just in case something opens up.
Oh, here's some good advice. You guys should all definitely have these behavioral questions down, because these companies, you apply 3 months, you apply in 1 month, and then 3 months later, you'll get a response from them, and they'll say, okay, we want to interview you next week. And so if you're not prepared with your behavioral questions, you're not going to be able to prepare for your research for the company either. And so I definitely say work on these behavioral questions now. That way, when you get the actual message from these companies, you can actually do the research, because you should submit out, you know, X amount of applications. I submitted over 50 applications. And I definitely didn't research every single company specifically, but I only researched the companies that were interested in me. The people who got back to me gave me an interview. And I was able to do that research for these companies because I had already finished my behavioral research, you know, research on myself, research on how I wanted to actually present myself as an applicant. So I would say definitely finish your behavioral first and then start applying. And that way, when you get that job application or the interview process, you're ready.
Great
When you
advice.
have these long gaps in response time from the company, should we reach out after like 2 weeks, or should we just leave it until they get back to us?
I would say check in. So if you, let's say you apply, you have a couple, if you're at the point where you have had 2 to 3 interviews and you're just waiting for the response, usually they'll say, oh, we'll take our time and we're gonna get back to you. I'd say maybe maybe 3 weeks, maybe 4 weeks. Oh, I'm still really interested in the position. I'd love to work at this company. Please get back to me. Be very polite, but ask them in a way, do you know when you'll be able to provide a response? Maybe every 3 to 4 weeks. And some of these companies I applied at Seagal on the East Coast, and August 15th, I had an interview, and then September 10th, I had 3 interviews. And they reached out to me a couple days ago saying, oh, are you still interested? Are you still available? So you will definitely get those emails as well. They want to gauge if you've accepted an internship or if you don't care about the company anymore. 3 to 4 weeks, I'd say. But you'll definitely get some responses from them.
Okay, thank you.
One moment. You can continue asking questions. Jaime is very educated in interviews.
Okay, so we have a question in the chat. Yeah, so the way you approach a career booth, first thing, you definitely want to have your resume printed out. And your resume should be tailored to what kind of industry you want to do. I definitely wanted to go in more into finance, so my resume is tailored to finance. You have to tailor your resume to actuarial science if that's the kind of position you want to go to. You definitely want to make a good impression, have a nice firm handshake when you're talking to the representative of the company. Talk about yourself, ask them a little bit about the company, get to know them. It definitely should be more informal. Ask them what the next steps of the interview process are, where can I apply? And then if you can kind of connect on something outside of work, that's how you stand out as an applicant most of the time. What do you like to do on your free time? Where did you go to school? Things like that. People want to, converse, want to make it not awkward. This entire event is about business. So if you can take it away from business and make it personal, that's how you can really stand out, I'd say. Okay, we have another question.
So Andrew, yeah, I'll take that one. Okay, how do you explain the lack of experience due to not being able to get past an interview? So are you saying like lack of experience from interviewing or from positions in that field?
Positions in general, because you can't get past the interview to get the position.
I'm sorry, can you repeat that?
I would say like the positions in general. And then the reason you're not getting the position is you're not performing in interviews well enough.
Okay. I definitely say get yourself out there. And that just means like I don't know, if you're not a sociable person or you're still, working on it, put yourself out there, put yourself in uncomfortable situations where you're more, you have to become more confident. Practice your behavioral questions, like Jaime said. Know your resume in and out. That's not as related to your question, but have tons of experiences in the sense that you don't have to have 1,000 experiences. You can have just a handful and just tailor them to each response. I think practicing helps a lot. When I used to practice, I would do it in front of like a mirror or just my laptop. But I would say definitely in front of people face to face, because when you're actually faced with that, it makes it, you're kind of raised to a higher standard. You realize that you have to behave in a different way or be a little more confident.
Andrew, I can also speak on this, Andrew. Both of those questions that Dylan asked me, my elevator pitch, which is the tell me about yourself question, and the question about tell me about a time you've worked in the group, both of those questions, I've actually said those myself, the answer to those questions over 100 times each. I would literally record myself on my laptop, and I would critique myself after. I'd give myself 3 minutes to answer the question, and I would do a mock interview with myself. So you don't need anyone else. You can. That's also a pro if you can get that, but it's not necessary. My answers to Dylan's question in that mock interview were extremely rehearsed. I knew exactly what I was talking about. And even then I still made mistakes. You can tell I stuttered a little bit. I wasn't perfect. They're not looking for people who are perfect. They're looking for people who came prepared to the interview, people who did their homework, because they know people are human. And so as long as you do your homework and you come to the interview prepared with all your answers, they can definitely tell whether or not you mean business. And what I mean by that is whether or not you did your homework and you prepared for the actual behavioral questions and the technical questions. So it's also going to be, sometimes you're going to mess up. For instance, if you have 10 interviews, you're bound to mess up on a large portion of those. And so it's all about volume. The more interviews you get, the more likely you are to get an interview, to get a job, excuse me. And so all you need is one job, I assume. And so once you get that one job, then you're good to go. So it's all about volume. The more you apply to, the more interviews you fail, the more likely you are to succeed in getting one of them. I'll give it back to you, Dylan.
Of course, thank you for the response. I loved it. Any other questions? I know we're going on a little late. Oh, let me see. So you're gonna want to find a balance. I like your question a lot, Pablo. Like, should we rely more on ourselves as a person rather than our qualifications? You're gonna want to find a balance between your characteristics as a person, you know, if you're outgoing, team player, things like that. As opposed to just saying, oh, you know, I passed this exam, I passed this exam, and that. You're gonna want to show that you're a well-rounded person. You know, if you go up to someone at a career fair, you know, talk to them about maybe what they do on a daily basis, or you know, how they got there, maybe what college they attended, things like that. You want to make connections. Someone at Pacific Life at the info session was they're very open. They're UCSB alum, so I think a lot of us related to them a lot. But they said, oh, you know, we go snowboarding, we take surf trips, and he said, you know, if you're applying and I find out that you snowboard or that you surf, it's going to be a huge thing to bond on, and it will definitely be remembered. So for these career fairs, definitely, you know, kind of want to like suck information out of them, but at the same time, you want to maybe talk about your personal things. Thank you, Megan, for posting that. You can register for the career fair there. Yeah, Pablo, just don't require online qualifications. You know, people hire people they want to work with. So, you know, if you can have a good conversation, you know, like Jaime said, it's business. So you can draw a little bit out from totally business. That's great. That's how you make connections. So don't be afraid to talk about yourself. Any last minute questions?
Oh, I had a question. Do you guys know of any like tips for, like, let's say you just submitted an application to, like, I don't know, some internship, right? Would you think it would be helpful to like maybe contact someone that works at that company and maybe get yourself a leg up in, or would it not really matter?
Yeah, no, I get what you're saying. If it's a smaller company, it might help you,
Yeah,
but it doesn't always. Some of you may have seen or heard of OLA, Organization of Latino Actuaries, and I'm close friends with the co-founder of it, and she's been director at Willis Towers for 20 years. And I told her, hey, can I apply to your position? Should definitely, you should apply. And in my head, I'm like, I got this, you know, this is gonna be great. I'm gonna have an
Yeah.
advantage. And I get the link, here your hire view is, record yourself doing this interview. So a lot of times those people, unless they're like an HR, they're in HR or they're in recruiting, they're not gonna have that ability to, I don't know, give you some pull.
yeah, I gotcha.
It's just the formatting of the HR. Smaller companies, you would definitely have pull.
Mhm.
Yeah, don't. Yeah, you know, Pablo. So there's Regina and there's Adelaida Campos. Yeah, you definitely know them. They are very helpful, Pablo. On a side note, Paul, I sent you an email about that, and if you're interested in, what I talked to you about, definitely get back to me. They're very helpful. Regina helped me build my resume. That's like another thing, just general advice. Reach out to as many people as you can. Make these connections. The actuarial and insurance industry are very small. So if you have people at different companies, it's really great. You can learn about more opportunities, get help. When I submitted my resume for the career fair last year, the virtual career fair, or before I did, it was like a couple days before. I looked back on the other day, and I couldn't stop laughing because it was so bad, and because I hadn't had access to some of these resources. The resume workshop helped me out a lot. Speaking to some professors, Janet Duncan, Reza Feldman, and then talking to OLA or these other. I know they have one International Association of Black Actuaries. They're actually having a career fair tomorrow. Reach out, just anybody, like any actuary can just give you a really big helping hand. I'll kind of want to talk about more about our info sessions tomorrow. So we have Bright House at 2, and we have I'm blanking. We have another company at 4. Sorry, it's been so busy. But I'd say if you Willis, I was testing you, Megan. Thank you. Yeah, we have Willis Towers Watson, massive company. So in that info session if you're interested. And then for those of you that you're just looking, like Jaime said, volume, you want to find as many opportunities as possible, sign up with the link I sent you a couple hours ago, International Association of Black Actuaries. There's no restriction. Same with OLA to attend their career fairs. There's no ethnic or gender or age restrictions. They're open to everybody. They just want to, they will talk, maybe a little more. I know OLA focuses more on Latino people, but for the career fairs, open to everybody. They're set up using a site called Brazen. And I won't share my screen right now, but basically there's like 35 companies. You click it, you enter their virtual room, you select what job you want, and you're paired with a representative. Extremely organized. You can talk to probably, and for 6 hours. So you can probably talk to 15 companies, maybe knock out 8 to 10 interviews in that one time span. If you submit your resume, I'd say do that tonight if you haven't already. Yeah, I think we'll wrap it up now. Like, last question I'll take. I know most people here are mad at me. Last question though, before we go. Anybody has one?
Go shoot away.
Shoot your shot. Okay, well, thank you everybody for attending. This will be posted on the website tomorrow evening at the latest. Same with these slides. So if you want to go back, definitely review them. Thank you, Audrey. Thank you everybody for coming. And yeah, we'll see you hopefully Thursday in person.